So thanks for those kind words, and many of you I've known for many years in different capacities, so it's always exciting to reconnect. And I just smiled because I was just in Melbourne, and the photographer is a young guy, one of my kids' ages, and he's South African, and he told me that his mom, who's a Rebbitzin, sends him Mashirim. So he's like a 35-year-old male. So I went, wow, even young guys are listening to them. So I'm very gratified, and of course if anyone does want to get on, it's free, it's no obligation. It's not the best recording, it's not like a professional podcast, but you can hear on it, and thank you for this opportunity. This topic can be a very difficult topic, and there is only actually one way to address it. Now, of course, I will use some psychological principles, but we are living through history, and we are living through a very important time where one of the things that we have seen is that secular education has no moral backbone. And I'm saying this now, and I said it recently when I spoke at the Bina program, that everyone needs to be very discerning of what's being put out. I can say it, I'm a clinical psychologist and I work with a lot of people in the field, but just be discerning, because there was a time when we idealized professors and academics, but there's no moral backbone, and a lot of what is coming out has an agenda and isn't really pure. And everybody here in this room obviously is attached to Judaism in some way, and you really need to, this is an opportunity that I hope I can give you to reconnect to really what's important and what is true and hasn't changed. Torah values have not changed since its inception. Secular values change. I've seen it in my own lifetime. I'll just mention one without judgment, but when I first qualified, the DSM-3, being a homosexual was seen as a deviance, and today it's not. So things change all the time. Torah doesn't change. The things of what is right and what is wrong has not changed. The way to relate and how to see the world has not changed. We can make it more relevant to ourselves, but it's true and universal and eternal. And so there has never been, I realize today, that the Hashgacha Pratis of actually talking just after Rosh Chodesh Purim, at a time when we're going through what we're going through, there's never been a better time. And it reminded me of the Rebbe who used to always say, this week's parasha is the most important, whichever parasha it was. And this week's Chag, and that's what I felt this morning. I was listening to a shir and I realized this is actually the most important point, that actually the Purim story can actually guide us in incredible ways for what we're going through. So before we start, I want to just tell you a story. I'm going to read the names because I want to give this Israeli hero who lost his life the credit that he needs. His name is Elisha Lowenstein. He was 38 years old. At the age of 8, he went on Aliyah with his family from New Jersey, and he grew up in Beit Shemesh. He was a software engineer, and he was also very learned. He was a Talmud Chochem. And he passed away in Gaza on Rosh Chodesh Teves, which was the 13th of December, 23. And his wife spoke on a video, some of you might have seen it, and one of the things that came out of it that people were talking about is that he was also very fit. So he would do, let's say, his 20 push-ups, and then between push-ups, while he was catching his breath, he would learn some Mishnayos. And he used every moment, in a very meaningful way. Every minute of time was important to him. He left behind 6 children and his wife. The youngest is 10 months, the oldest is 12, and he was actually preparing his 12-year-old for his bar mitzvah. Now, he was exempt from duty, but he volunteered. He said to his wife, I want to go and fight, and she supported him. And his job was to rescue soldiers who needed medical care. And before that, he was a pillar of his community. He lived in a place called Harish, and there was an anti-tank missile that was fired by Hamas. And apparently he saw his unit was in danger. He jumped to save them. If I cry, just ignore me. And he saved many of them, but unfortunately he lost his life. So it's one of these very tragic stories that we're hearing about of heroes, and may his passing be a blessing for all of us, and may his blood be avenged. Now, Rabbi Jacobson was repeating the story of this week's Parsha, and he was saying that he is friendly with a man by the name of Shalom Goodman, who's actually a Wall Street Journal editor, who lives in Brooklyn, and he just recently had a baby. And his wife decided, and together they decided to name the baby after Elisha. Never met him, didn't know him, just had heard the story. And so they called him David Elisha, because David also was a hero of the Jewish people and a warrior. And when this friend of Rabbi Jacobson, Shalom, told him what they had done, he said, why don't you phone the wife Hadass and tell her what you've done? So they shared with her the news, and she got very, very excited, and she said, you know, every Rosh Chodesh my husband bought me a gift. And she said, I have no words, but the day that you named this baby happened to be Rosh Chodesh Adar, and this is the best gift my husband could give me. Now, it's a beautiful story, and there are lots of the things that we can unpack in it, but is she happy? What does it mean to be happy? Is she happy? We need to understand what happiness means when we talk about finding your inner happy. She is living a purposeful life, and every day when she wakes up, she is grateful for what she talks about, having had a husband like she had, who died al Kiddush Hashem, and she has enormous purpose, not only being part of the war, but being part of bringing up her children. So we need to reformulate what it means to be happy, and what is the message of Purim to be happy. And the message of Purim is our happiness comes from serving Hashem. It's understanding that each of us has a unique, totally unique function in this world. Just like we each have individual fingerprints, nobody has the same function. And we often don't know what that is. But we are in this world, and we are needed in this world. And the fact that we are needed by Hashem and we have a purpose to fulfill is what we're happy about. And whatever Hashem asks us at whichever time is what makes us happy. Sometimes he gives us what we want and we can be happy. And sometimes he doesn't give us what we want, but if that's also his will, we can be happy. Now, these are concepts that secular psychology doesn't really talk about. And that's what I mean. This idea of pursuing happiness and what the way you're going to achieve it doesn't really work. And how do I know that? Because mental health issues are getting worse. More and more people are on medication, but there's no correlation of improvement. So even though more and more people are taking medication, more and more people are suffering from mental health issues. And when people ask me, maybe we're just measuring it better now, I'm at an age where I can say no. I was alive in the 70s at university where there were psychiatrists and they were taking measurements. And I'm alive now, thank God, 40 years later, and I can tell you it's not the same. It has definitely got much, much worse. And we have statistics even in the last 15 years, they say since the start of Facebook actually, adolescent suicides are on the rise. All these things are facts. So yes, there's a limitation to what secular thought. We can tell you to go and breathe, and psychologists can tell you to love yourself and to do all those things. But at the end of the day, if you're not in touch with your inner core, which is a Jewish soul, and fulfilling your life's mission, then it's almost impossible to really be happy, because look at life. It really, if you look at it in just one way, it's difficult. It's full of challenges. It sucks. It's cruel. There's no end of the negativity. The only way to find that inner happiness is to realize you're more than just your body living in a world, that you have this essential soul that has an essential purpose. So what Rabbi Manis Friedman talks about, and he has, if you ever listen to him, a very cynical style, he says, stop being needy and start being needed. He says the reason so many people are unhappy is because we are needy. I need this, I need my needs met, I want this, I want a bigger car, and so you will always be unhappy because there's always the next thing that you need. The minute you turn that around and you go, I'm needed, then your life has purpose. So for Hadass, she's needed every day. Her kids need her. And as I say, I don't think she's walking around all the time singing a happy tune. But what I do know, because I've worked, as you say, with thousands of people, at the end of the day, when you've had a fulfilling day, the word I always think about is you feel stretched. I don't know any other word. You feel stretched. You feel good. You feel well-being. I'm a somebody. I've achieved something. In my little circle, it was a good day. And that's what we are aiming for, to really understand that we are needed. And so when we realize, when we say Modeh Ani in the morning, that Hashem is saying, I need you and I'm giving you your soul back for today, to really think about not what do I want. It doesn't mean you can't have a good life, but it means the focus on is what am I needed for. And someone said to me at a share a few weeks ago, she said what really helped her with this is somebody said, instead of going, I've got to take my kids, say, I get to take my kids. It's just a slight thing. I've got to make dinner, I get to make dinner. All these things are actually privileges. They're opportunities. You know, when whatever it is that you have, whether it's a husband, whether it's children, whether it's a sick relative, whether it's a mother, it doesn't matter. When you get an opportunity to do a mitzvah, to fulfill something godly, then your life has purpose. Now, being godly from a Jewish point of view isn't spiritual. People talk about being spiritual. It's nothing esoteric. Being godly is very action-oriented. So when someone walks into a room and you smile and you greet them, it's a mitzvah to greet someone with a smiling countenance. That's being godly. When we care about other people and we send them a meal, or we include them, or we're even kind to our husbands, that's actually being godly. It's nothing up there. It's in our action. There's sometimes it's hard to be kind to your husband. It's even a bigger mitzvah. These things, we have choices to do. So when you do the right thing, and it builds self-respect, when you actually could get angry and scream or storm out and you actually don't, you actually feel better because it resonates with your soul. So think about it. Now, again, I've seen this. Often people will stew and be angry, and I'm going to tell them, and I'm going to do this, and then you choose not to, and you go, you know what, I'm going to let it go, and I'm actually just going to be kind and give them the benefit of the doubt. You feel so much better because you've acted with self-discipline, you have self-respect, but you've actually done a godly thing, because it is godly to be kind and compassionate and go out of your way for other people. So when you attach to that godly soul, that's when your inner self starts to be happy. So if you think about the story of Purim, which, as I said, this is the perfect time to think about it, they also went through a potentially genocidal situation. We forget about it. When I say we, I include myself, because Purim seems fun, and you drink a little bit, and you put on your mask, and you dress up. And that's very nice. Those are certain behavioral things we do. But Purim actually is one of the deepest stories in Torah. And we say that even when Mashiach comes, we will celebrate Purim. It seems the most frivolous. It doesn't seem as serious as Yom Kippur and other things. But actually the story of Purim is so deep that we will always celebrate Purim even when Mashiach comes. So the story of Purim, there are a lot of lessons in it. So the one lesson that I was listening to Rabbi Lappin was talking about today was that we are living through history. Right now, we are living through incredible history. It's obvious to us. We're always living through history, but sometimes it isn't obvious. During Corona, we were living through history, but now as Jews, we're living through incredible historical times. But we are only seeing one little part of a movie. It's like walking in, watching 5 minutes of the movie and trying to understand the whole plot. So he was talking about this in the sense of, what is the miracle of Purim, and when did it start? And one of the ways that I always thought it started was with Vashti. The story goes that all the Jews were assimilating. They were at this party. Vashti was asked by her husband to come down naked because she was supposed to be so beautiful that all the men wanted to see how beautiful she was. And there she was, afflicted with some kind of skin disease. boils to rice, some kids say tails, whatever happened, she didn't feel so beautiful and she refused to come down. And then this very wise man asked his men what he should do, and they said, you should kill her. And because she was killed, that's how Esther ended up in the palace. But what I only learned today is that actually Vashti was his wife, and she was also very cruel. And she was actually she was the daughter of a previous king who was also very cruel to the Jews. And apparently what she did, which I, as I say, didn't know until today, was that she would get Jewish girls to come and serve them at their dinner table naked. So we have a concept of midah keneged midah, that Hashem gives you back what you do to others. So the story, as Rabbi Lappin said, actually started there. She was afflicting Jewish girls. They had to come in naked. And I don't know how many years later, she was then asked to come in naked. Everything's always connected. And I'll give you an example. If you think about how Jacob was cheated by Laban, he cheated his father. If you always look through history, there's always the midah keneged midah. So when did this whole story of Purim start? The whole history starts years before. So whatever we're going through now, when did it start? Did it start at the Holocaust? Did it start at the State of Israel? Did it start in the First World War? We don't know. We're watching 5 minutes of a movie. But we're part of a historical progression. And so to spend too much time trying to work it out, why do bad things happen, we will never know. Not in the sense of we're stupid. It's too big and too complicated. It's to own that we're in this historical process and to bring out the Queen Esther in us. What is that Queen Esther in us? What happened was Mordechai contacted her, so now she gets chosen against her will. She's living in her harem, and she's in a bubble. And Mordechai contacts her and says, you need to go to Ahasuerus and you need to save Jewish people. And she could have said theoretically, look, I'm safe, I'm in the palace. What's going on out there doesn't really affect me. But she was a bit afraid, because if she went to Ahasuerus without his permission, she might have been killed. And there's a very famous expression, and I don't have it in Hebrew, but it's in the Megillah, where Mordechai says to her, Hashem has many ways of saving the Jewish people. You don't have to do it, but you will be losing your moment. And that's how we need to find the Queen Esther. We need to know that God will solve these problems. We don't know how. And we've been through other genocidal things that take their toll. And people do die, he says, as karbonos. There are sacrifices. There are heroes. It's part of it. Why? But we have Queen Esther moments where things come across our way, where we have an opportunity to do something that is uniquely in our path. And when you do that, even if you don't realize that it's a unique thing, you will just feel good. You will have an inner sense. So one of the examples I often give is, let's say somebody comes knocking on your door, a proper charity, and they go, I'm talking about a Jewish charity. So, I don't know if you have it so much, but I know when I grew up, where they used to call them the schnorrers. They'd come in Johannesburg and knock on the door, right? And people would go, don't open the door, the schnorrers are here. Apparently, I've read that 200 years before, people were very different. They would go, oh, thank goodness, someone's giving me the opportunity to give tzedakah. Let's run to the door, this is my opportunity. That's how you can look at it. Oh, these schnorrers are bothering me again. This person's asking me for help again. How many more people? Or I get to do something. I get to give. I get to be needed. So looking at things that come your way as opportunities to be needed, as opportunities to fulfill a unique mission, to be part of a bigger history, is very, very important. We can stand by and say we're in our bubble. We can fight against it, and we can do something. Sometimes people do some very negative things. Or we can be part of history by thinking about what is our unique contribution that we can make. But it is going to happen, whether we're part of it or not. And we don't want to miss that opportunity. Now, one of the things that Elisha role modeled, it's a term that is an old-fashioned term that when I first came from we used. I don't hear it anymore, but I will use it. It's called Bertelsmann. People would talk about, don't do that, it's a waste of your time. We live in a culture where everything is about spoil yourself. Rabbi Friedman said the other day, he said he was driving up wherever he lives in America, and he said there was a big billboard that said, your skin deserves it. That's the culture we're living in. Your skin deserves this cream. Your back deserves this mattress. I'm not saying you shouldn't buy the best cream. What I'm saying is the idea of entitlement and our need. So it's a very different thing. Is one should look after oneself. Self-care is very, very important. But not from a point of, because I love myself and I deserve it. From a point of view is that your body has been given to you by God to fulfill your purpose. And you have a responsibility. It's a mitzvah. It's a spiritual thing to do. When I talk about being godly, to eat properly and sleep enough and to exercise and to moisturize your skin with the best cream you can afford. No one's saying don't do it, but it's the way you think about it. If you think I deserve it and poor me, you will be miserable. If you think about I have got this body that is there to fulfill a purpose and I'm going to do my best to look after it, just like if you had a very expensive car or piece of jewelry, you would look after it. You'd get it cleaned regularly, you would lock it away if it needed to be. Your body is no less valuable. So look after yourself by all means, but don't come from a point of view what I need and I'm entitled, because you know what? It never ends. I need this now. What is going to be the next thing? And there's this feeling of always being disgruntled and dissatisfied. So the second thing that Magnus Friedman says is not only about being needed rather than being needy. He talks about being grateful. Now, gratitude is today, if you actually Google, there are millions of things about gratitude. So that's a good thing that's come out. I know that Oprah in, I think, 2016, she glorified, in a good way, I'm not being horrible in any way, glorified having a gratitude diary. It is very important to be grateful. But to be grateful that Hashem has given you these things, because who says you should have them? Why do we feel we should have had something else? And this is the idea of understanding your unique purpose. You have been given what you need to fulfill your purpose. So the example is, let's say that you are in education, and next door the latest dentist moves in, and he's bought this new chair that moves in all positions, and he's paid $500,000, which is what these chairs cost, for that chair. Do you feel jealous? No, because you're not a dentist. You have no use for it. So the idea is that often when we're jealous of other people or look, because we think we have a use for them, but we don't. If we did have a use for them, we would have it. So don't look at what other people are doing, even if you think they're doing better than you. If you've got so much energy, other people might be able to work through the night and you not, then that's not for you. You need to find what you can do that resonates with your body and your soul and what works for you. So drop comparisons, because being unique means that nothing is the same for all of us. We all need in a different way to fulfill our purpose in a different way. I always think about Adam, the first man. He was given the world. He was given this magnificent Garden of Eden, but he was actually given the whole world, told to look after the world. He named the animals. Most powerful man in the world, had an incredible soul. And what ate him up? That tree. I've got all of this, but I want that tree. Why can't I have that tree? And that's what we often do. We're so busy worried about that tree. The other story is given about Nebuchadnezzar. Apparently he was also an evil king, but apparently he was short and squat. But because he was powerful, he could have any woman he liked, and he had all the money in the world, and he ruled the whole world. You know what bothered him? His weight. It used to eat him up that he couldn't be thinner. But he had the whole world, and we all do this to ourselves. We always look at that one thing or the two things that we wish we could have. So inner happiness comes in actually really being grateful for what we do have and understanding we have got exactly what we need to fulfill our purpose. And again, if you go, I've been watching quite a few things of people who are interviewing some of the wounded from the war. Very, very tragic stories, young people. But most of them, I know many of them are in trauma centers. I believe they're now calling them resilience centers, which I'm thrilled about. They have an incredible understanding of what they've done. The majority of them, even those that are traumatized, and I'm totally generalizing, and I'm sure there's some who aren't, but the people that are fighting the war have this incredible mission. They know what they're doing, and they're very unified in doing it. And even if, God forbid, they've lost a limb, there's an enormous gratitude that they're part of the picture. And many of them quite quickly are volunteering in other capacities, whether it's to talk to other wounded people or to go to the families and talk to them. They immediately become needed. And that is who you need to use as your role models. Choose your role models very carefully. Don't look at the billionaires who seem to be having it easy. I don't know if they are or not. A lot of people say, I don't think money. It doesn't matter if they might be happy. I don't know. But those aren't good role models from a Jewish point of view. Look at people who are living a godly mission. One of the things that Rabbi Lapin said today, he was talking about trends. And I wanted to share this. This is very new, but I thought, he said one of the new trends, on October the 7th, our lives changed. And one of the trends is that we are back in a ghetto, in the sense that we know it's us and the world. Now, this is not a new Jewish thing. The word Avraham comes from the word Ever. Abraham believed in God. It means on the other side. Abraham was there. The whole world were idol worshippers. That is the source of Judaism. He's the first Jew. We've always been Ever. We've always been different. And he was quoting, and you can watch him on YouTube. I really recommend him, Rabbi Lapin. He was quoting, so I don't have it here, in the Megillah, about all the things Haman says. And what Haman says in the Purim story is, these people, they're different. They'll never be part of us. And that's the truth. For 70 years, many of us believe we're just like any other nation. We just want to be like them. We want to be accepted. But we're not. We are not. And this is what we've seen. What's going on, even with people who aren't blatantly anti-Semitic, we are different. And the idea is, he says not to feel alone, because we're not alone. We've got each other and we've got Hashem. But the Jewish journey is to be alone, to be different to the world, and to be godly in the world. And the more we try, like the Purim story, we go to hit the party and we eat treif and we do whatever. Doesn't matter. I'm not criticizing that, because people will, but we're trying to fit in. At the end of the day, we are different. And the more we embrace the fact we're Jewish, sometimes in my life experience, people have respected that. But even if they haven't, it doesn't matter. We don't have to apologize for who we are. And that's why it's an incredible thing. And this actually makes me want to cry. Is how many people are wearing Magen Davids? I have so many clients who never would wear a Magen David. They're dafka wearing a Magen David. It's not about the level of kashrut. It's I'm a Jew and I don't care that I'm different. I will let you know that I'm Jewish. It's incredible. That's one of the things the war has brought out. And he was talking about how before the war, apparently there were big philosophical debates whether the state of Israel could continue, because the nation was so divided. Because the secular views and the more right-wing views, I'm not even talking about religious, but the more right-wing views about the army and about how big Israel were completely split. And apparently certain great people in the Jewish world thought the state is not sustainable. What happened in October the 7th was a revealed miracle. The first miracle was, Rabbi Lapin says, the fact that we were taken by such surprise. And there'll be reports, and but at the end of the day, it makes no sense what happened those first 6 hours. Doesn't matter what they discover, it makes no sense. This one didn't know and this one didn't report. That's all part of God's plan. Miracles aren't always good. It's when it's above nature. It makes no sense that the Israeli military, security, Mossad, nobody. And then they didn't come. It was Hashem set that whole thing in motion. And that's the Purim story. Hashem's name is not mentioned once in the Megillah. If you think of what a graga looks like, it's a little stick, the old-fashioned gragas, and a big piece on the top. We are living in this world, this little bit, and Hashem is moving heavens. Moving my blood. moving heavens, the same thing. We doing whatever we do, we've got a Mossad and an IDF, and we've got all whatever it is. At the end of the day, Hashem has orchestrated a whole lot of miracles that we're not even aware of. That's the Purim story, is to see God in your everyday life. So he says that's the first one. But the second miracle is how people just came together. And he said the difference between Jews, we talk about other nations, and it's not a derogatory term, goyim. It means a nation. We are not a nation, we're an am. We're a people. Am Yisrael Chai. We are a people, we're a family. We are unified in a way that is not like another nation. And what we've been seeing, which is incredible, is how the silos have come down. Before, you would see, we'd have Haredim, and the Haredim who wear this yarmulke and that yarmulke and this level of kashrut, and then you have the secular. It's not like that anymore. You've got people who look one way and act the other way. He was saying, and it's true, you get people who might look Haredi, but they're actually not even keeping Shabbos. And then you get people who look very secular, and they're very committed to lots of mitzvahs. We've got to stop judging other people or even judging ourselves. It's about the connection to God, and in all the ways that I'm saying, to live this godly life by doing good deeds. But knowing that unity is another way of coping with what we're going through. Being part of a community is a way to feel happy, to find your inner happy. Jews are not meant to live alone. We are community. Our whole lifestyle is about community. We live, you need a shul, you need a mikveh, you need a school, we have all our charities. That itself is an incredible feeling that you're part of a bigger whole. So if you're in any way isolated, bring yourself in. There are plenty of ways of being part of the bigger whole. And if you know anybody that you feel is isolated, that could be your mission. Go out of your way to bring them in. Go out of your way to find a way that they can benefit, have that happiness of being part of a whole. It's an incredible thing. I went to the Supercenter maybe a few days after the war broke out, and I was very, that feeling, it was just happened, and you walk into Bingley or something, and it's full of all kinds of people, and you're sort of feeling, I don't know what's going on. And then I heard Hebrew, and I just walked up to them and I said shalom. We just started. I didn't have to say the war, your family. We just knew what we're both going through. That connection made me happy. I wasn't happy, but it made me realize I'm part of something bigger. I'm not alone, and I don't have to explain myself, and we're all here for each other in different ways. Now, doing the right thing doesn't always mean that you'll get the response that you want. And this is something when I run my Emet groups that often comes out, that people will give an example where they'll say, my neighbor was always angry with me, and I decided to go next door and make peace. And I had the courage. I've been putting it off for a year. I had the courage, and I went and I did it. Now, what happens often is we go and they're rude to us, and we go, see, it's not worth it. I'm not doing it again. But the godly way is to go, I went, and it doesn't matter the response. I would have liked that response, but I still did the right thing. So gratitude, self-respect, doing the right thing, being part of a bigger whole, all these things I'm mentioning are the ways that one can actually feel happy. Knowing that even when people, God forbid, are hurting, there's a godly purpose. If we think back over all the years and all the things, the Spanish Inquisition, the Holocaust, all the terrible things, but it's part of a bigger historical journey, we are now playing a part now. And as I said earlier, to go down the rabbit hole of trying to understand, to a point it's okay, but you're not really going to. It's more about living in the moment and actually grabbing each opportunity as they come. Of course, I'll go back to what I said at the beginning. I'm not saying don't access psychological support. If you need to talk to someone, go. And if you need to do breathing every day and meditation, these are all good things. It's all part of your mental health. But there's a point at which it's not enough, because it's like when I do a lot of burnout stuff with corporates. One of the things that the World Health, this is a bit of a segue, but the World Health Organization was saying that burnout in organizations is caused by organizational structures. Stop blaming the individual, because what's been happening, and it's still going on, if someone is burnt out, they go to the HR department who says, go to our EAP for 4 sessions, do meditation every day and you'll be fine. But every day they're coming back, or after 3 weeks, to the same manager who's overworking them or gaslighting them. So it was really incredible when the World Health Organization came up and said it's to do with organizational structures. You can do your breathing and you can go to yoga. They're beautiful things to do. But there's a bigger thing that we sometimes have to address. So I'm not minimizing. I do this work every day. I would never belittle the work that I'm passionate about, but it's not enough. And in the context of this environment, I can talk like a Jew and I can say it's not enough just to do those things. There's a higher purpose that will get you through. And that is why actually I disagree with Maslow's hierarchy, because he puts, survival at the bottom and actualizing yourself at the top. And there probably are more clever people that have disagreed as well. But the truth is many, many people can cope with terrible things when they have meaning. And the example I had, when the Ukraine war broke out, there were a lot of people who left the country, but there were a lot of Jews in the Ukraine and quite a few Chabad houses. And one of them stayed behind. He was a young man, about 19 years old, and he also, I hear this all from Yossi Jacobson, was his nephew or something. And he spoke to him and he said, how are you coping? So the war had just broken out. He said, I'm in a bunker with like 25 of our congregants. And he said, so how are you coping? He said, I feel I've been preparing my whole life for this moment. He was emotionally okay. He was apparently hungry. They were cold. I think it was snowing. It wasn't a good time. But when you are actualized, when you are meeting a purpose, these people need me in this bunker, you actually can cope with a lot more. So that's what inner happiness means. And that's why Hashem can say, be happy on Purim. Was it a happy time? It actually wasn't. The Jews nearly were wiped out. Esther's story is quite a tragic story itself. On a personal level, it's not such a happy story. But on a bigger level of what God was orchestrating, the Jews were saved from genocide. But the idea is connecting to Hashem, realizing that we are in a much bigger world. We have a spiritual world that if we connect to, then all these difficult things we're going through have purpose. And having purpose, by the way, there are psychologies that look at that as well. So if you want to put it in that thing, definitely not only Viktor Frankl, but there are people who talk about having values. But even values, this is more than that. You can have a value of kindness, but why are you doing it? When you're doing it because it's about being godly, it's about bringing heaven down to earth, it's about finding the Esther inside of you, then you'll find inner happiness. Well, thanks very much.
Rene, thank you.